Happy Sunday again, and happy Sunday school. So here we are, going through the Bible. And which screen am I sharing? Why is that screen black? Let's do a refresh on that. Okay, while that's figuring itself out, we are going through the Bible. We are in the age of the patriarchs. We've gone through patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, and we are now at the last one, Job. So we will be picking up today in the book of Job, chapter 26. There we are. So, hey, good morning. While we are waiting on that. So we are about the year 1588 BC for the main events of the book of Job here. And so while the map is waking up, let me grab something. There we are. Got some possible show and tell when that gets situated, but while that's going, so here we are, 1588 BC, Middle Bronze Age, 2A. Over in China, they are under their second dynasty, the Shang dynasty, with their emperor Tai Gang. In Egypt, they are under Pharaoh Seweg-Kari of the 13th dynasty during their second intermediate period. Assyria, back in their early days here, this is about 800 years before the time of the devotional. So early days of Assyria, they're under their king Arisam II. And in Isin, in the Mesopotamia area, Sumer, Shinar, and all that, Isin is under their king Damikilishu, Larsa is under their king Rimsin, and Babylon is under their king Apelsin, who is the father of Hammurabi, and we'll certainly get to him as we go. And lastly, over in Phoenicia, which is now Lebanon, one of the places attacking Israel right now with Hezbollah, in the city of Byblos, just outside of Beirut, they have King Yakin El during the time here of Job. So while the Lord's people are in Egypt, if we're considering Job's main events taking place about 1588 BC, that would put Levi at 117 years old right now. And the descendants of his brother Judah in the line of Christ, we would have Judah's son Perez, possibly about 86, Perez's son Hezron, possibly about 73, and Hezron's son Ram, possibly about 15 years old. So all that brings us to where we left off in Job chapter 26. Now, again, we're not reading chapter word for word like we did a few years ago. We're pulling out some highlights. So let's reread from last week, Job chapter 26. We'll pick up in verse 5. Job 26, 5. The departed spirits are made to tremble under the waters and their inhabitants. Sheol is naked before him, and Abaddon has no covering. He stretches out the north over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. Try to push that. He wraps up the waters in his clouds, and the cloud does not burst under them. He obscures the face of the full moon and spreads his cloud over it. He has inscribed a circle on the surface of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness. So some scientific accuracies mentioned there. There we go, all better now. So some good things to talk about that we picked up, that we ended on last week, and we'll get back to some of those this week. But before we do, so we've got these, so we got China over there, all these other places we just mentioned. What I do want to share, so here is Midian, here is Uz, here's Mount Sinai, here's Mount Seir with the Edomites. Up here's the Promised Land. Up here is Lebanon. And here is Jordan on the right side, the east side of Israel. So what I want to share with us, let's see, right here. And we'll get right back to Job 26. But very first and foremost, I want to share something for any who've heard the news or seen the news. Israel has been under attack. And so what's going on, and does this have anything to do with some of the things we've talked about and seen going on? Yes, it does. I'm going to share a couple minutes of video from someone I follow on YouTube. The channel is Israel My Channel, which I encourage anyone to check out. This guy does a lot of great 3D models, computer generated, of Jerusalem and the temples and things over the course of time. But being there, he had this to share on what's happening right now, which I thought worth helping us who are way over here kind of get a better picture.
Shalom, friends. I'm saying shalom, and this is something that Israel really needs. Israel needs peace. It was one of the worst day and worst night in the history of the modern state of Israel. As of this day, over 400 Israelis have been killed and over 100 taken captive. And I want to say something here, that Israel is a very small country and a lot of people just know each other. And basically, if 400 people are killed, there is somebody you know in Israel that have died now. Besides the human casualties, which are the most tragic, there's also damage to infrastructure, equipment, because the Palestinians are firing rockets and not targeting specific targets, so the rockets hit everything. Even there are some rockets that hit Palestinian territories, Palestinian houses. So basically, it's just a strategy to destroy as much as you can. Israel now is in the state of emergency, and people are drafted into the army, and schools are closed, children are not going to schools. Many things are not working. It's a totally different mode now in Israel. As I speak now, Israel's army is entering the Gaza. And just so that you understand, this will cause a lot of additional casualties on both sides. Gaza is a very small place, very condensed with population. And it's going to be a very difficult mission for those young men, young women that enter this very dangerous area. Additionally, rockets already have been fired on the north, from the north, coming from Syria, where Hezbollah is operating. Iran, of course, is very happy right now, and people actually in Iran are asking the governments in Iraq and Jordania to let them pass so that they can come to Israel and just kill Jews. So it's very complicated situation operationally. It's a nightmare for the military. Many things are happening. I will try to keep you updated. It's best to follow me on X, former Twitter, where I have just much more freedom to just post things and show things than here on YouTube. And some of the things are very dramatic. You will find the link to my X account in the description of this video. Thank you again for your support, for your prayers. We really need it. I wish you all the best. Shalom.
And there are the Israeli soldiers singing a song of hope as they're about to go in. Get the idea there. So, back off now. So with that, any initial questions or thoughts on what's happening, what was just shared here, and where we're at, and what this has to do with anything?
Well, first thing popped in my mind was when they said to start firing missiles into Israel, and nobody's been able to really accomplish that in the past. And what happened? Did they calm their guard down? Or?
Great question. So Brother Clay asks, this really hasn't happened before. Israel's been pretty much able to hold the stuff at bay. They have this thing called the Iron Dome, which really stops a lot of the rockets. So what's different now is this is just a massive onslaught of rockets. If you see some of the video, and for time's sake, I didn't share all those, but it's just nonstop. I mean, when you're being hit with so many, there are going to be some that slip through. And so that's what's kind of happened there. So this is the reason this is a more successful attack, if you will, is because it's a larger attack. And so nothing on this scale has really happened before on modern Israel's homeland since they've been established. And so they've normally been able to keep others out. So this is now, there's video of a bulldozer type thing just going in and knocking down their fence and everyone just kind of pouring in. And 80-year-old grandmas being taken hostage, and little kids as well. Civilians, major casualties. You hear hundreds of the dead, about 50 of them are soldiers, the rest are civilians. And so it's a major deal here. And so, yeah. And the fact that we just gave tons of dollars to Iran for hostages, well, now a bunch of Israelis are being taken hostage. So there is, yeah. So there is a boldness on the part of Israel's enemies. And I think it's not so much Israel letting their guard down, it's us, part of it. Of course, there's a bigger picture too that God's involved in, but it's also America. Talk is cheap, and we have not really lately had Israel's back, and this deal with Iran kind of proved that. So yeah, so as we talk Wednesday nights, going through Revelation and the things we talked about in our Q&A last Sunday afternoon, this is real-time stuff happening. And so it's very important that we just not plow along with our lives. I mean, what's in front of us to deal with in our lives is important. But everything in this life is passing away. God is working something out eternally here, and we are going to be affected. The things that are working out now have eternal consequences and aiming in the direction the Lord's taking things. So very important that we are tuned in and have our perspective right and have our engagement right and our priorities right as these times are going to be stepping up. Brother Joe.
Yeah, a long time ago, well, when Brother Thomas was here, we were talking about game time, and he said, keep an eye on you.
Absolutely.
Keep an eye on you. That stuck to me, and when this started happening, it looks like it's the beginning.
Yeah.
Obviously.
One of the things the Antichrist is going to do is broker a peace with Israel. Well, for there to be peace, there has to be a conflict. So is this that one? Who knows? We'll see. Sister Peggy.
Well, I do. I think about what there really is in Palestine.
Right.
And, that's a different discussion.
Mhm.
But like where Clay was going, well, I think when we think of Israel being attacked, we think from a distance, from afar.
All right.
This isn't from afar.
These are the next door neighbors.
Neighbors. This would be like Visalia firing in on Tulare.
Absolutely.
And just sending missile after missile after missile, and we wouldn't have time to catch our breath.
Yeah.
And then Iran on the other side is so full of hate.
Yep.
And they've always been angry.
Right.
What have I always described them?
Serious.
The women, they're just, like, they're so intense. And it's just, I don't know. Israel is the apple of God's eye.
Yeah.
He says that scripture, he's only gonna let it go so far before he steps in.
Yeah.
Because he's not gonna have the Jews wiped out. That's just never gonna happen.
Right.
And so, yeah, it is really important for us to keep our eye on Israel and watch what God does.
Yeah.
Because that's our signal. That's our, yeah, we're in this time.
Absolutely. And so I think that with the balance to strike is be aware of these things, but then it's not just head knowledge. It's a case of, okay, this is to affect our decision making today. The things that we spend our time and energy on, the things we prioritize, how we bring the Lord into the things of our daily life. The urgency, the shortening of time, the prayer, absolutely. So the being spiritually minded and not too caught up in everything. So speaking of the future and times in the future, from the devotional, Isaiah chapters 24 to 27, we're talking about some of those things. And Brother Clay came to me the question on that. We'll get back to Job 26 here in a second, but I like to get these brought in for discussion. So Brother Clay, you give a quick update on what you were asking about?
About the one?
Yeah, that Isaiah mentioned.
Yeah, I just, you know, you're skipping around, but I know, you know, in one verse, it starts out, you know, celebrate with wine, and ends with celebrate with wine twice, and I was just curious, but you know, is that really wine he's talking about, alcoholic beverage? And he said, yes, and I don't know where, it just, you know, if you don't, and I know, we're, you know, anything in moderation type of thing, but it just, it doesn't, in Jesus' day or whatever, that, like in the chosen, when they go to the wedding, and he's dancing around like he's had a few too many, you know, and acting like the rest of them, and, you know, is that what they really did, you know?
And the answer is yes. And so the reference was Isaiah 25, verse 6. Now the Lord of armies will prepare a lavish banquet for all peoples on this mountain, a banquet of aged wine, choice pieces with marrow, and refined aged wine.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. So the difference between new wine and aged wine, as you can imagine, new wine is freshly made. It's put in the wineskins. This is in the Gospels. We saw it in the historical fiction series, The Chosen, we're checking out. And so it's put in fresh, new wines put in a fresh wineskin. So as it ferments, the wineskin expands with it. And so Jesus talked about that being our own vessels as well, the spiritual application of a physical reality of their daily lives. But also we see here that it was a part of their society, a part of their culture, and it was normal and it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't an idol, and that's when it becomes a problem for us. When it becomes the center of attention and the focus, okay, then we miss the boat and we're missing the whole point. But it plays a supporting role in the celebration and the festivities, like Jesus's very first miracle, turning water into wine, where the guy said, hey, most of the time at these parties, they serve good stuff till everyone's getting a little full of themselves, and then they put out the cheap garbage because no one's going to tell the difference because they've had, but you save the best stuff till last. And so not only did you just make wine, of course, anything God does, he does well. So he made good wine, his very first miracle with his church. He had a church of 5 people at that point in time. 5 of the apostles were with him. And so, and fermentation is actually a process, and there is fermented alcohol in space. It's a natural process. This isn't just a man-made thing. So it was a normal part of their lives, and it wasn't a big deal. And so, but for them, it was also part of, not the focus of, but a part of a celebration, whether the wedding in Cana or the wedding that's described here, with the coming together of Christ and his bride, and the launching of the millennium from Jerusalem, where the enemies are going to be put to shame and Christ is going to be reigning with those who've been faithful to him. He's going to shock everyone and say, look, these are my people. The ones you've been blowing off and disregarding, these are the ones they've been with me and I've been with them, and I'm claiming them, and they're going to rule and reign over you. Yeah, Yeah,
And they dance all the time
yeah,
for every occasion, makeup occasion, whatever they desire, but they do dance.
Yeah.
And usually the men dance with the men and the women dance with the women. And it's not an interactive thing.
Yeah.
Between man and woman.
it's not a dirty dancing thing where
No, it's not a dirty.
it's not sex with your clothes on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And, but I was thinking about his first miracle too.
Yeah.
And it just makes me giggle, not to get off subject.
Okay.
But, he can listen to his mama.
Yeah, that was great.
You know, and I just, mom and your son, I feel like, just do it.
And that was
You
her,
know,
exactly.
just do the thing, you know you can.
And that becomes a running joke, inside joke between the two of them in The Chosen, where Mary says response to that was, if not now, then when? And so then later on throughout different episodes, that phrase will come up again. He'll remind her of that. And then and so, yeah, it's kind of a nice mother-son thing. Yeah, because she had, exactly. And because she displayed that faith in him, he's like, okay, there's faith here I can work with, I can go work, let's do this. And so, yeah, and so what this is all about, whether we're looking at Job, Isaiah, the Gospels, Revelation, and the end times, it's all about the people who have faith in Jesus, have faith with, and like I've been saying, these 1 Corinthians, it's all about keeping faith with Christ and with each other. Job was keeping faith with God and his Redeemer that he was looking forward to, who hadn't come yet. And so that's what it's all about. And that's what it's upon us to keep fervent and fresh and joyful about. No matter what other circumstance, no matter what other situation, we deal with those, we work through them, they are all temporary. This is eternal stuff we don't want to miss out on for the sake of these other things. We had our monthly pastor Zoom, first Saturday of the month, we're doing this, and had it yesterday. And Ashley did it from the hotel in Bakersfield with Ashley yesterday. And one of the things we talked about was demonic activity in the world. And as we've talked a little bit here with the end times and how things are going. And one of the points, in our discussion is that one of the many jobs they have, or one of their many goals, is to sideline us, distract, disable, anything they can do to keep our eyes off of this focus that Job had, for example. Satan tried to sideline Job and he couldn't. So with this focus on what's happening in Israel right now, are people going to be sidelined and distracted, or are people going to be kind of woken up a little and attention gotten, and okay, I need to get a little more serious and attentive to these things and my own life, because things are all going to be coming to head, and so much is just not going to matter. I really appreciate one of the things that was said in the pastor's discussion, and this was just a sign of the times. Rialto's new pastor, Philip Maney, today's his second Sunday as pastor. And so he mentioned in his discussion with the church, as far as, and we've got others who are going, and you have a call to other churches that are without pastors, so pray for all that. But in the pastor church discussion and dynamic, one of the things that they were dealing with and talking about was the time has now passed. Peter talks about how the time has passed for some of these other things. The time has now passed to be, do I want to go to church today? Or do we want to do this, doing this? Because remember, a lot of churches were down to one service with COVID and all that stuff. Well, hey, we kind of still stay down to one service, some of these places. And he's like, if I'm coming in as pastor, we need to get back to this. And they're just like, well, yeah, we're kind of wanting to do so. Coming together, basically this realization, the things that we used to debate about in our minds or question about, do we really, is it okay? The things we're kind of lackadaisical about, like, that time's gone. This is stand up, take notice time, but it's a good thing. And so we see here in Job, Job's reminder in chapter 26 of the things we left off in verse 10, verse 7. He stretches out the north and he over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. I thought that was a pretty cool discussion here. Let's see, let me close that. So we saw how we had fun talking about the compass. Yeah.
Weren't you in the process of saying, just verse 10, 11, then your science, and were you going back to say that was an eclipse then?
What I was mentioning was that there was not an eclipse during the time of Job that we have recorded. We don't have a specific date and time for that. But what I mentioned was with our awareness, as Job and his people were aware from God's creation and the things he set in motion, including the planets and the sun and the stars and the moon and all that stuff, they had that awareness of God's setting in place, setting in motion, and God's timing of things. And so we have that same awareness now. We have on our computers, we have computer programs where we have in motion, we see kind of what we're experiencing now as we're going. What do we just to figure out? We're rotating 1,000 miles an hour. We're moving across our orbit at 66 some odd thousand miles an hour. And so we can see this on a computer, in motion, like kind of live representation. What we can also do is run it backwards. And we can see when we run it backwards, when the moon blocks the sun, or when the sun blocks the moon, lunar eclipses, solar eclipses, and all that stuff. And we can see, okay, if we freeze frame, this is the position of the Earth, moon, and sun at this point in time on this date. Well, if we run it backwards, we run the clock backwards, run the motion, the alignment and the positions, we know where they were at any given date, back into the BC days. And we see that when the Babylonians and others were marking events by the placement of the sun, moon, and stars, we see, yes, it lines up and it fits. They knew what they were talking about, and it works. And so they were intelligent and observant and legit. And so Job makes these observations about the Lord and how he stretches out the north over empty space. We talked about South Pole, North Pole, no east or west pole, which I love because the scriptures say, as far as the east is from the west, he separates us. Well, where does west end? Where does east end? They don't. They keep going in that circle. So we are so separated from our sin that we couldn't find it if we went looking for it. We know where the North Pole is. We know where the South Pole is. There's no east or west pole. And so he even says that beyond the North Pole, as we touched on last week, he stretches out the north over empty space. North continues. We talked about the North Star, Polaris, polar, and all that. And he suspends the earth on nothing, not on the shoulders of Atlas or cosmic elephant, any of that stuff. So that's kind of where we left off on verse 7, Job's awareness of God's control of this and their scientific knowledge, 1588 BC. And so let's take a look from there. Verse 8, he wraps up the waters in his clouds, and the cloud does not burst under them. So there's awareness that water vapor is going up in the clouds, so it's water, but the clouds are able to suspend themselves and not burst from the weight of the water. So that's something that'll come up more later. Verse 9, talking about eclipses. He obscures the face of the full moon and spreads his cloud over it. So we see that. I really like verse 10. He has inscribed a circle on the surface of the waters. What do we see here? We see a circle. Remember creation, the separation of the waters. He inscribed a circle on the surface of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness. There's another verse we'll get to later. It talks about the rolling, like a rolling pin almost. And so the recognizing of, as we're rolling, the horizon and the boundaries. And so recognizing that we're a globe, a sphere. They knew this back then, as we touched on last week as well. So lots of very, very cool science in the Bible, even in our very first book. Thank you, Job and Holy Spirit, for inspiring this conversation to be recalled and captured and recorded. So any other reactions or thoughts on Job 26 verses 5 through 10?
Well, I never like how it says east to the west, it keeps going and going. But I was speaking to north and south, I go, why do they say a stopping point? Because it's still in a circle, but what you said, they call them North Pole and South Pole. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Things we don't normally think about, but
But
yeah.
I'm like, 'cause it's still in a circle, north and
Oh, yeah.
south. But when you said pole, like, okay, so they do have a point for those, but east and west, they don't.
Like the ink pen with the axis.
Exactly.
So I never thought of it that way.
No matter which way the axis turns.
Mhm. It's still got a top and a bottom.
I never, put that
Yeah.
in place, a pole, and like, oh, I understand that.
Because it's a
So
ball,
like,
you think it's
okay,
round all
makes
around.
sense now.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you're not supposed to be having fun. This is Sunday school.
And it goes,
I think we're okay for now. Hold on. Observation from Dr. Henry Morris on his book, The Remarkable Record of Job. He makes the point from verse 10. God promised the flood would never return to cover the earth again. And this promise is mentioned 3 times in Job. It's actually touched on in this verse, later in chapter 28 and chapter 38. The significance of this promise is obvious when we realize how fragile and tenuous the earth's land-water relations are. It would take, now the earth's 70% water. It would take only a minor uplift of the ocean bottoms to send water over most of the earth's land surfaces. Yet God has promised otherwise, and he has kept that promise. The word compassed in Hebrew is kug. He has inscribed or encompassed a circle or compass around the surface of the waters. That Hebrew word kug means to be made spherical, referring to the shape of the earth, especially to its sea level, which is the basic data for Earth's geometry. Measuring the surface here, 70% of the surface is water. So you're measuring water surface. So the surface of the water is conforming to the sphere. We know that water is, if you study liquid fluid dynamics, fluids like water, they take the shape of their container. You put it in a square container, it's going to take a square shape. You put it in a cylinder, it's going to take the shape of the cylinder. So what is causing the water to take the shape? What is holding the water to take the shape of the sphere? Okay, Brother Peter.
Yeah, I thought about that, and then also, how water is, and it beats up, you see it beat up, and it forms a circle, then
Yeah.
you see some kind of water beat up, and I'm like, oh, that's what I just need. And in space, they had it, the astronaut put water out there and it kind of beat it up.
Yeah, it does, yeah, beat it up. That's a great observation. Pretty spiffy, yeah. Okay, so let's see here. Check something real quick. Also good. Yeah, okay. There we are. Cool. So that is that for that section. Let's skip down to verses 12 and 13. See if this sounds familiar. With his power, he quieted the sea, and by his understanding, he shattered Rahab. By his breath, the heavens are cleared. His hand has pierced the fleeing serpent. Sounds like something we just read in the devotional from Isaiah. Now, again, this isn't me coordinating all these things or planning these things. It's just where the devotionals happen to fall. Isaiah 27, verse 1, on that day, the Lord will punish Leviathan. Leviathan will be mentioned later, as Rahab is mentioned here in Job 26. The fleeing serpent, with his fierce and great and mighty sword, even Leviathan, the twisted serpent, he will kill the dragon who lives in the sea. Job 26, with his power he quieted the sea. By his understanding shattered Rahab. By his breath the heavens are cleared. His hand has pierced the fleeing serpent. So Isaiah, 800 years after Job, is making the same point that Job's making here 800 years earlier about God's control of the waters, even the dinosaurs and monsters of the waters, and even a reference symbolically and pictorially to Satan, the serpent who's trying to flee from God's judgment, and it doesn't go very well for him. So there's the bigger spiritual picture behind the scenes, and also the real picture of what God did on this impressive earth with these impressive monsters of the earth and creatures that were very, very real. So some cool stuff there. Anything else on chapter 26 from anyone? Real quick, chapter 27. I just have 2 things. Verses 5 and 6. Job continues to speak here. Job 27, verse 5. Far be it from me that I should declare you right. Until I die, I will not give up my integrity. I have kept hold of my righteousness and will not let it go. My heart does not rebuke any of my days. Now we understand, Job is not claiming sinless perfection here. He's claiming a clear conscience under God, that all his sins that he's aware of, he's made right with God, and east to west, God has removed them. And so in absolute, pure, undeniable truth of his life, he's able to make this claim. And I pray that we, with our own awareness of our fallen state and our sin infection and our humility, are still able to, in spiritual assurance, make the same claim. That we're holding on to our integrity. What's integrity? One of my favorite words. If I ever started a mission, I would name the church Integrity. But I like the name Grace too, big time. Integrity is what you see is what you get. It's the opposite of the most common complaint about church people, hypocrisy. And so integrity is what's on the outside is what's on the inside. It's the same thing through and through. And so when Job talks about maintaining his integrity, he's being honest and open before God and everyone. What you see is what you get. I am who I am. My sins are my sins, but I've dealt with them and gotten them taken care of. And this is it. This is honest. The great thing, it said before, the great thing about truth is you don't have to remember it. When you try to tell lies and then other lies to keep those lies, it's a lot to try to remember. And I'm not that good at it, and so, which I guess I don't want to be. And so it's a lot simpler just to be true. You don't have, the truth is natural. It is real. So all it's a matter of is just sticking to it. That's my story and I'm sticking to it, kind of thing. And so that's where Job is at. With everything going on, he says, I can't lie and say that, yes, there's a sin I haven't confessed yet. No, I've committed plenty of sins and I've confessed them all and gotten them made right. I can't lie and say, you guys are right. I know my integrity before God, and there's nothing that Satan can do, nothing you could say that's going to change that. And it's not bragging, it's just honest relationship. Praise God and thank God for his grace, but it is what it is. And with that clear conscience, my heart is not rebuking any of my days. I have regrets for a lot of my days and things I've done, but the clear conscience under God and that mercy and grace and peace, whew, is a beautiful thing that helps us deal with those and have, okay, I put it in its place now. And that is so liberating, so free. It's not removing our ownership or responsibility. It's owning and then moving forward and not being condemned to it or chained to it. If Christ sets you free, you're free indeed. And so that's what we're talking about here. So I thought that was a very powerful couple verses there. Last trivial note, last verse of chapter 27, verse 23. People will clap their hands at him and will whistle at him from their places. And those are talking in terms of mockery and derision over someone who's not following God. You can read the context there. But I just thought it interesting trivia. People will clap their hands at him. It's not hooray applause. It's, ooh, that's bad kind of thing. But they will whistle at him from their places. So 1588 BC, they were whistling. They knew how to whistle. So I don't know how long it took him to figure out, how many generations down, or if Adam figured it out, or Eve had a teacher, or whatever. But so I thought it was kind of a human interest kind of thing. There was whistling. And so back in the day. Now, let's close. I'm going to, did you have something, Sister Peggy? Please, yeah, please.
Go off to this.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I've mentioned that to my son Carlos. We talked, about this in the years that he was in one stuff and my younger years and I go, nobody whistles or hums anymore. You always used to hear somebody humming a tune in the grocery store or someone working in their yard and whistling. And I was like, what happened to that? There's nobody whistling or humming or anything.
Yeah.
You're good. You're doing good. You get a smile out.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's that lack of happiness and joy. Brother Peter.
I was kind of, yes, I'm the only one who whistles at my house. And I heard a thing back when I was younger, whistle while you work. So I was whistling and I go out to clean up or whatever I do. And I was, you don't have to listen out there. I
can't do two things at once.
You want to choke on your gum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all familiar with the Winchell's Donuts? I remember they did a commercial where they appropriated that, said Winchell's while you work, Winchell's while you.
That's old.
Yeah, so am I. Let's close just reading chapter 28 to set us up for next week, the whole chapter. This is some amazing stuff here. Job chapter 28. We'll close just with this reading, and I encourage you to go home and spend some time checking this out and come up with some thoughts on this. Job 28. Certainly, again, Job's still speaking. Certainly there is a mine for silver and a place for refining gold. Iron is taken from the dust and copper is smelted from rock. Man puts an end to darkness, and to the farthest limit he searches out the rock in gloom and deep shadow. He sinks a shaft away from inhabited areas, forgotten by the foot, that hang and swing away from people. From the earth comes food, and underneath it is turned over like fire. Its rocks are the source of sapphires, and its dust contains gold. No bird of prey knows the path, nor has the falcon's eye caught sight of it. The proud animals have not trodden it, nor has the lion passed over it. He puts his hand on the flint, he overturns the mountains at the base. He carves out channels through the rocks, and his eye sees anything precious. He dams up the streams from flowing and brings to light what is hidden. Verse 12. But where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Mankind does not know its value, nor is it found in the land of the living. The ocean depth says, it is not in me, and the sea says, it is not with me. Pure gold cannot be given in exchange for it, nor can silver be weighed as its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, which is understood to be India, in precious onyx or sapphire. Gold or glass cannot equal it, nor can it be exchanged for articles of pure gold. Coral and crystal are not to be mentioned, and the acquisition of wisdom is more valuable than pearls. The topaz of Cush cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. Where then does wisdom come from? And where is this place of understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of every living creature and concealed from the birds of the sky. Abaddon and Death say, with our ears we have heard a report of it. Verse 23. God understands its way, and he knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth. He sees everything under the heavens. When he imparted weight to the wind and assessed the waters by measure, when he made a limit for the rain and a course for the thunderbolt, then he saw it and declared it. He established it and also searched it out. And to mankind he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And to turn away from evil is understanding. So I think that gives us some good stuff to kick off next week's Sunday school looking at and discussing. So with that, we'll go ahead and stop our share, stop our recording, and get ready to go before the Lord in song.